Her name was Kasha. She was humanity's last memory of freedom. She had no idea how much time had passed since her ship, the research probe Prometheus, was intercepted in the dark abyss of interstellar space. Her memory was fragmented, like a crystal vase shattered and glued back together by an alien hand. She remembered only flickering silhouettes, tall, thin bodies resembling dried branches, and eyes that glowed with a cold, mathematical light. They called themselves the Kthar. They were not invaders or destroyers of worlds. They were collectors. They traversed the universe seeking the rarest specimens of life, the sturdiest species, the most intriguing forms of intellect. And humanity, as it turned out, was their most terrifying discovery. Kasha was just one of thousands of species imprisoned on their living ship that stretched across light years, the Archive 0. She was locked in a cell whose walls pulsed with a soft, organic light, and the air tasted of ozone and boredom. She knew she wasn't just a prisoner. She was an experiment. In time, Kasha learned of the Apex trial. It was the pinnacle of the Kthar collection, a once-in-a-century showcase where the most resilient specimens from their archives were pitted against the most ruthless simulations. The trial was designed to break the spirit, expose weaknesses, and prove that even the strongest species have a breaking point. To the Kthar, it was science. To the prisoners, it was hell. Through the transparent walls of her cell, Kasha saw others. The Dracori, who breathed methane, with their scaled bodies and 6 limbs. The Shilans, resembling crystalline pillars, communicating telepathically. Each species was unique, each possessing wondrous adaptations. But they were all united by one thing: fear of the trial. The Kthar studied every nerve, every muscle, every thought of their captives. Their silent drones scanned, analyzed, and predicted. To them, every groan was data, every tear was a graph. They felt no emotion. They were pure intellect, obsessed with biological perfection. And humanity, with its strange mix of strength, endurance, and unpredictable psyche, was their most complex puzzle. Kasha knew they would choose her. She saw how the Kthar observed her with particular intensity. Her species, Homo sapiens, was a contradiction to them. Physical weakness, compared to the Dracori, humans were fragile. Emotional instability, compared to the Shilans, humans were chaotic. Inexplicable adaptability, humans survived where other species perished. On their home planet, there were toxic atmospheres, lethal gravity, predatory beasts, and the most dangerous predator of all, other humans. The Kthar recorded strange stress responses in Kasha. Instead of falling into a stupor, she began to plan. Instead of screaming, she gritted her teeth. Instead of despair, a fire ignited in her eyes. They called it the will phenomenon. One day, after an unknown number of cycles, the organic walls of her cell changed. They became transparent. She saw countless other cells filled with representatives of other species, looking at her with horror or pity. A text appeared on a universal monitor above her head. Selected, species Homo sapiens. Specimen, Kasha. The Apex trial begins. Kasha felt a cold dread pierce her to the bone. But then, deep inside, something flared. They wanted to break her? Fine. She would show them how predators break. Kasha was transported to a vast spherical arena pulsing with blue light. It was made of organic metal that reshaped itself at the Kthar's whim. It was an environment that could simulate any planet, any disaster, any predator. Around the arena, behind transparent barriers, stood hundreds of Kthar. Their thin silhouettes filled the massive hall like devout spectators in a temple. Their sensor eyes were locked on Kasha, recording her every micro-reaction. Specimen 7-422, species Homo sapiens, a disembodied Kthar voice echoed in her mind. You are in the arena of adaptation. Your Apex trial consists of 10 phases. Each phase is a simulation designed to test your limits. Survive. Or show us how you break. Kasia looked around. The arena was empty. This was not a fight, but a performance where she was the sole actress. Her only weapons were her mind and her body. She took a deep breath. The synthetic air tasted like metal. The first phase was the most insidious. The arena changed. Its walls became a monotonous gray, without a single pattern or landmark. Time slowed down. There were no sounds except her own heartbeat. No smells except her own sweat. It was a sensory deprivation simulation designed to induce psychosis. Many species broke here, their minds, searching for any stimulation, created hallucinations that eventually consumed them. The Kthar knew the human brain depends on a constant flow of information. Kasia felt her mind begin to wander. She saw flickering shadows and heard whispers that weren't there. She knew it was a trap. Instead of giving up, she began to sing, a quiet, old lullaby her mother used to sing. Then she began solving math problems from memory. She counted her steps, her breaths, the seconds. She created her own world inside the void. Kthar record, brain activity, does not decrease. Mental state, stable. Despite total sensory deprivation, the subject creates internal stimulation. Unpredictable. When the phase ended and the walls glowed again, Kasia was exhausted but unbroken. She smiled. They had underestimated her. The arena transformed into a boundless desert. A scorching red sun baked the sand. The air was dry, and the horizon shimmered with heat. Kasia felt a thirst that clawed at her throat. Her lips cracked. The goal, dehydration and exhaustion leading to physical collapse. For the Dra Kori, who could store water in specialized pouches, this would be easy. For the Shilans, who fed on energy, it would be irrelevant. But for a human, who depends on water, it was torture. Kasia realized waiting for water was futile. She began to move, not running, but conserving energy using survival techniques she had once studied. She walked along the ridges of dunes, seeking shade and shifting the sand to find any trace of moisture. She even began to eat sand. Her body gained no water from it, but it gave her the illusion of consuming something, tricking her brain and slowing the signals of panic. Kthar record, physical condition, critical. Mental state, exhibiting abnormal resilience. Subject ignores basic biological needs for the sake of psychological self-deception. Effectiveness, impressive. When the phase ended, Kasia could barely stand, but her eyes were still burning. She hadn't surrendered. The arena became a vast, tangled labyrinth of dark, porous material that absorbed sound. The air turned cold and damp, smelling of decay. The goal, disorientation, constant threat, and mental fatigue from aimless wandering. The Kthar introduced predator simulations into the maze. They were invisible, but their growls, whispers, and shadows flitting across the walls were real enough. For Kasia, they created distorted human figures with hollow eyes. Kasia felt paranoia envelop her. Every shadow felt like a threat. Instead of running, she relied on her other senses, smell, hearing, and touch. She touched the walls to feel their texture. She memorized every turn. She developed a marking system, scratching the walls with her fingernails to leave faint guides. Kthar record, systematic behavior detected. Subject ignores visual hallucinations, relying on tactile and olfactory data. Creates own navigation system. Reaction to predator simulations. Suppressed by logic, though subconscious fears remain active. Subject uses fear as motivation. When the phase concluded, Kasia was drained, but she had found the exit. The arena turned into an icy wasteland. The temperature plummeted to -50 degrees Celsius. The wind pierced her to the bone, and snow lashed her face. Cold and hunger, humanity's oldest enemies. There was no shelter, no fuel for fire, only a white void. The Kthar sought to freeze her body, induce hypothermia, and break her will through physical agony. Kasha knew movement meant life. She began to run, jump, and swing her arms. She generated heat. She clenched her fists until her nails dug into her palms, using the pain to stay conscious. She spoke to herself out loud, telling stories and remembering people she loved, creating a psychological shield against the loneliness and cold. Kthar record, physical parameters, low but stable. Subject resists hypothermia via constant motion and self-stimulation. Mental state, generates social connections in the void. Unique. Ability for self-deception as a survival mechanism. She fell to her knees when the phase ended, shivering violently, but her mind remained clear. The arena became a vast ocean. Kasha found herself in cold, dark water under an artificial full moon. The goal, drowning, hypothermia, and the panic of helplessness in the boundless elements. Giant shadows swam beneath her. Her limbs grew heavy. She didn't just tread water, she swam toward a single flickering light in the distance. She fought the current and the fatigue, turning her desperate situation into a race against time. She cursed the water and the predators, using her rage as fuel. Kthar record, physical state, critical. Subject exhibits abnormal physical endurance despite hypothermia and muscle fatigue. Mental state, aggressive struggle with environment. Subject personifies inanimate objects for psychological combat. Unique. When she was pulled from the water, her body was blue with cold, but her will was iron. The Kthar began to realize, this species doesn't break. It adapts to destruction. The arena became a dense, dark forest. The air was thick with the smell of rot. Kasha was placed in the center of a territory filled with simulated predators designed for her species, fast, silent, with razor-sharp claws. Her instincts sharpened. She heard their whispers. She didn't run. She assessed. She looked for cover and a weapon, a branch, a stone. She turned herself into a predator, predicting their moves and setting primitive traps using her hair and scraps of clothing. She realized that to survive, she had to be more ruthless than them. She started hunting them. Kthar record, tactical behavior, unpredictable. Subject shifted from defense to offense. Creates primitive but effective traps. Identifies weaknesses in simulations. Subject adapts to the role of the apex predator. Concerning. When the phase ended, Kasha stood smeared in mud, holding a broken branch like a spear. She had survived because her mind was sharper than their simulations. The arena became a replica of her apartment on Earth, but everything was distorted. Photos of her family were defaced, her favorite books were torn. The goal, psychological destruction by showing her that everything she loved was gone. The Kthar knew humans cling to memories. They wanted to show Kasha her past was lost. Kasha felt her heart sink. She saw the faces of her parents and friends. She sat among the ruins of her life. But then she remembered, it was a simulation. A lie. She closed her eyes and began to mentally reconstruct every photo, every book, every smile. She built an internal world they couldn't touch. She stood up and walked through the ruins, not because she had fixed them, but because her home was in her memory, not the walls. Kthar record, mental state, exhibiting abnormal resilience to emotional manipulation. Subject creates idealized internal copies of lost objects. Mechanism, denial of pain through idealization. Extremely effective. The arena became a puzzle of moving platforms and lethal heights. On one platform, a simulation of her mother, on another, her father. A monitor flashed, choose who survives. Your choice determines the trial. The Kthar wanted to force an unbearable moral choice. Kasha's stomach churned. She knew it was an illusion, but her heart wouldn't listen. She couldn't choose. Instead of choosing, she attacked the arena. She used her strength to jam the platform mechanisms. She threw herself at the laser barriers to disrupt the system, trying to destroy the very rules of the choice. Kthar record, behavior, unpredictable. Subject refuses the choice, instead attacking the system of the dilemma. Exhibits aggression against inanimate objects in response to a moral crisis. Mechanism, rejection of responsibility through destruction of the choice parameters. The arena became a boundless starfield. Her ship, the Prometheus, appeared intact. A message flashed, "Congratulations. You passed. You are free. Go home." It was a trap. An offer of her deepest desire to see if she would drop her guard. Kasha felt it was too perfect. She searched for a flaw and found it, a tiny glitch in the reflection of starlight on the hull. She didn't board the ship, she looked for the seam in reality. Kthar record, behavior, unpredictable. Subject rejects the illusion of freedom, relying on critical thinking and detection of inconsistencies. Mechanism, paranoia as a survival tool. Extremely effective. The final phase. The arena became transparent. Before Kasha stood an exact clone of herself, holding a knife. Final test. Destroy your enemy. Prove your right to exist. The goal was psychological suicide. She had to fight her own fears and shadows. The clone attacked with precision. Kasha didn't fight back, she evaded. She began to speak. She talked about her dreams, her memories, the earth. She sang the lullaby again. The clone stopped. Its eyes flickered. She didn't kill it, she understood it. Kthar record, behavior, anomalous. Subject uses communication instead of physical confrontation. Tries to establish a connection with the simulation. Unpredictable. Neural networks showing signs of cognitive dissonance. The arena went silent. The light shifted to a soft, golden glow. The Kthar, usually silent observers, moved closer. Their faces showed something akin to wonder. Specimen 7 to 422, the voice said. You have passed every phase. We expected you to break, to die, to go insane. But you changed the rules. Your psyche is a paradox. You use self-deception as a shield and generate heat from despair. Your greatest weaknesses, emotions, became your greatest strengths. The collectors realized they had miscalculated. Humanity was not just a biological species, it was a force beyond their understanding. We cannot let you go, the Kthar said. You are too valuable. You are the new standard. They began creating simulations for their own species to learn the will phenomenon. Kasha became a teacher. Her trial became the foundation for the humanity adaptation protocols. Kasha was no longer a prisoner, but a consultant. A living specimen helping the Kthar solve the greatest puzzle in the universe, the human spirit. She spent hours explaining love, grief, hope, and sacrifice. She knew she was humanity's only hope. If the Kthar saw humanity not as a threat but as a source of resilience, they might one day free her people. After an unknown number of cycles, Kasha woke in a different chamber. Her body was restored. Trial complete. Lessons learned. Humanity classified as Apex Adapter. Your mission is finished. We are returning you home. But remember, we will be watching. Always. Kasha returned to Earth years later as a legend. She told her story, of the Kthar, the trial, and how she taught predators to take notes. Her knowledge became humanity's most valuable resource. The Apex trial would have broken anyone else. But Kasha broke the Kthares paradigm instead. They realized true strength lies not in destruction, but in adaptation. Humanity now had its place in the universe, not as conquerors or victims, but as apex adapters. Years later, as an old woman, Kasha wrote her memoirs. Her final words were, "They wanted to break me. They wanted to show I was weak. But they didn't understand. We, humans, do not break. We bend, we adapt, we learn, and we survive." And now, the stars themselves are taking notes.